I rushed into the emergency room holding my son who had a persistent high fever, but I was stopped by the nurse. "I'm sorry, Adrian has given instructions. Our hospital cannot admit your child." I stood there stunned, feeling a chill throughout my body. My phone rang. It was my ex-husband Adrian. His voice carried a hint of triumphant cruelty. "Evelyn, how does it feel? Kneel down and beg me now, and I'll let your son live." From the phone came the coquettish laughter of his new lover. "Adrian, don't waste words on her, let her kneel outside. It will show everyone what happens when you offend me." Adrian chuckled lightly in agreement. He was certain I had no way out and could only beg like a dog wagging its tail. Looking at my son in my arms, his little face flushed red from the fever, I calmly hung up the phone. Then I dialed another number and said in fluent German, "Dr. Klaus, we're heading to the rooftop helipad now." "Yes, we can prepare for the heart transplant surgery. The donor, use mine." "Evelyn, how dare you hang up on me?" Adrian's roar exploded through the receiver, making my eardrums buzz. I ignored it and directly blacklisted his number. Leo in my arms whimpered, his small body alarmingly hot. "Mommy, I feel so bad." "Be good, baby, we'll see the doctor soon, it'll be okay right away." I kissed his scalding forehead and turned to rush toward the hospital's staff-only elevator. The nurse who had stopped me earlier chased after me and grabbed my arm. "Ma'am, you can't go in. This is the staff passage. Let go." I shook off her hand with such force that even I was surprised. The nurse stumbled back, her face full of astonishment. "What's wrong with you?" "Adrian instructed us, your son can't be treated in our hospital. Can't you understand?" Her words were sharp and biting, drawing glances from a few people in the corridor. "If anything happens to my son, your entire hospital will pay for it." I threw out these words, no longer looking at her, and pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator doors slowly closed, cutting off her furious curses. "Crazy woman. She's really crazy. Security. Security, come quick." Inside the metal compartment, there were only Leo's and my faint breathing sounds. I leaned against the cold wall, sliding down exhaustedly, holding Leo tightly in my arms. "Leo, don't be afraid, Mommy's here." "Mommy. I miss Daddy." The child's unconscious murmur caused a sharp pain in my heart. Adrian. How could he think I would beg him? How could he believe I would entrust Leo's life to him and that woman? The elevator dinged upon reaching the top floor. As the doors opened, fierce wind carrying cold raindrops hit my face. I rushed out holding Leo. The rooftop helipad was empty. A massive roar approached from afar as a white medical rescue helicopter slowly descended. The wind was too loud, my phone's ring was barely audible. It was an unknown number. I answered, and Adrian's assistant Jason's anxious voice came through. "Madam. Where are you? Adrian is going crazy. He can't find you, he's almost torn apart the emergency room." "Madam, don't argue with Adrian, the young master's illness is urgent." I smiled faintly. "What is he anxious about? Anxious to see me kneel?" Jason choked on the other end, unable to speak for a while. "Madam, Adrian was just speaking in anger, you know he." "Jason," I interrupted him, "tell Adrian this is the last time he can threaten me with Leo." With that, I hung up. The helicopter's cabin door opened, and a German man in a white coat leaned out, extending his hand to me. "Evelyn, hurry up." Holding Leo, I stepped onto the helicopter without hesitation. The cabin door closed, shutting out all the wind and rain outside. The warm air brought a slight thaw to my frozen body. Dr. Klaus quickly took Leo from my arms, laying him flat on the mobile bed, while the nearby nurse immediately began connecting various monitoring devices. Heart rate 180, blood pressure 60/40, oxygen saturation 85, the situation is critical. Prepare epinephrine. Watching Leo's pale little face and the tubes inserted all over his body, my heart was gripped tightly by an invisible hand. None of this should have happened. If not for Adrian, Leo should be in a VIP ward now, receiving the best care. My memories returned to 3 years ago, when my marriage to Adrian had not yet ended. At that time, Vivian was just his sensible assistant. Leo was hospitalized for the first time due to heart issues, and the doctor warned that the situation was not optimistic and required careful nursing. That day, I called Adrian countless times, but he didn't answer. It wasn't until late at night that he returned home reeking of alcohol and Vivian's perfume. "Where have you been fooling around again? Do you know your son is in the hospital?" I yelled at him. He irritably tugged at his tie. "It was business entertainment, can you stop being unreasonable? Isn't it just a minor cold for the son? Is it necessary to call me dozens of times in the middle of the night? It's congenital heart disease. The doctor said it's serious. Which child doesn't get sick? Hospitals just like to exaggerate to scam money from women like you." His dismissive words made me feel as if I had fallen into an ice cave. "Adrian, that's your son." "I know. That's why I'm working so hard outside to give him the best life. Unlike you, who just stays at home being paranoid." Beside him, Vivian timidly spoke up. "Sister Evelyn, don't blame Adrian, he drank a lot today to secure the Southern City project, his stomach is almost bleeding. He's doing it for the family." Her understanding demeanor made me look like a hysterical shrew. "Do you have a say here? Get out." "Evelyn." Adrian immediately shielded Vivian behind him. "What are you raving about?" "Apologize to Vivian." "Apologize? Adrian, you're asking me to apologize to her? She accompanied me for business entertainment for my career. Not only do you not comfort me, but you yell at her. Do you have any semblance of a wife?" At that moment, my heart completely died. So in his mind, my son's life was worth less than one of his business deals, less than the pretentious assistant by his side. "Adrian, let's divorce." I said this calmly. He was stunned, then sneered. "Divorce? Evelyn, can you survive without me? Everything you eat and wear, which one isn't provided by me? Do you believe that with one word from me, you won't be able to make it in H City?" I didn't argue with him further. The next day, I moved out with Leo. He thought he could trap me with money, but he didn't know that the inheritance my father left me was enough for Leo and me to live comfortably. I just didn't expect that 3 years later, he would use the same despicable methods, even more cruelly. "Evelyn." Dr. Klaus's voice pulled me back from my memories. "The child's condition is temporarily stabilized, but surgery must be performed immediately." I nodded and looked at my wrist. There was a small tattoo of a white dove with spread wings. This was the mark of a volunteer for the Ares project. "I'm ready," I said. Dr. Klaus's expression was somewhat grave. "Are you sure? Once you donate, you—" "I'm sure," I interrupted him, using my heart to save my son's life. "I am willing." The helicopter pierced through the clouds, flying toward the vast ocean. The lights of H City behind me gradually became a blurry point of light. Adrian went mad. When he rushed to the rooftop helipad with his people, seeing only the ground wet from wind and rain and the faint traces left by the helicopter's takeoff, he fell into a furious frenzy. "Where are they? I'm asking you, where are they?" He grabbed the hospital director's collar, his eyes bloodshot. "Adrian, we really don't know. That woman just rushed up holding the child, we couldn't stop her." The director was scared out of his wits. "Don't know?" Adrian kicked the nearby fire hydrant, making a huge noise. "A hospital with hundreds of people can't even watch one woman and one child. What do I pay you for?" Jason, trembling beside him, handed over the phone. "Adrian, we found out, there was indeed a helicopter that took off from here just now, affiliated with a German private medical institution, and the route is to a medical ship on the high seas." "Medical ship?" Adrian snatched the phone, staring intently at the information on the screen. "Contact them for me. No matter how much it costs, make them turn back immediately." "Adrian, this institution has a special background, we probably can't contact them." "Useless." Adrian backhanded a slap across Jason's face. I don't care what method you use, mobilize all the Shin family connections and intercept that plane for me. Now. Jason covered his face, repeatedly saying yes, and hurriedly stepped aside to make calls. Adrian stood at the edge of the rooftop, rainwater soaking his expensive suit, his hair messily plastered to his forehead. He took out his phone and frantically dialed my number. Sorry, the user you dialed is powered off. Sorry, the user you dialed is powered off. The cold system prompt plunged him into the abyss time and again. He suddenly thought of something and turned to dial Vivian's number. As soon as the call connected, Vivian's coquettish voice came through. Adrian, have you finished handling things over there? I'm so scared being alone. Has Evelyn called you? Adrian's voice was devoid of any warmth. Her? Why would she call me? Vivian was stunned for a moment, then cooed, Adrian, don't mind that woman, she's just trying to get your attention this way. Ignore her for a few days, and she'll come back obediently. I'm asking you, has she called you? Adrian's tone suddenly rose. Vivian was startled. No. No. Adrian, what's wrong? Heh. Adrian let out an ambiguous cold laugh. He remembered. When he called Evelyn to make her kneel and beg, Vivian was right beside him. After Evelyn hung up, he didn't call back immediately because he was certain she had no way out and would call back. He wanted to wait until she was completely desperate, then appear as a savior. But he waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and what came was the news of her disappearing with their son. This woman, how dare she? How dare she disappear silently with his son? Who gave her the courage? That German medical institution? Adrian's mind was in chaos, an unprecedented panic seized him. He suddenly became afraid. He wasn't afraid of Evelyn leaving him, but of her completely escaping his world in a way he couldn't control. At that moment, Jason called. Adrian, we made contact. The other side, they only said one sentence. What did they say? They said, Ms. Evelyn and little Leo are participants in the Ares project, protected by international conventions. No one has the right to interfere. Ares project? Adrian repeated the unfamiliar name, his heart inexplicably sinking. What the hell is the Ares project? Adrian roared at Jason on the other end, rainwater dripping along his jawline. Investigate. Find out for me what this is. Adrian, we can't find out. This project's security level is extremely high. Our people can't infiltrate at all. Jason's voice carried a sob. I asked my contacts in Germany. They only said it's initiated by a top global medical research organization, dedicated to conquering rare human diseases. Participants are either rich or noble, and many involve experimental treatment protocols. Experimental. These 3 words pierced Adrian's nerves like a needle. You mean Evelyn took my son to be someone else's guinea pig? His voice was filled with incredulous absurdity. Not necessarily, Adrian, maybe it's just routine treatment. Does routine treatment require a helicopter to the high seas? Require secrecy so high even I can't find out? Adrian interrupted him, each word squeezed through gritted teeth. He couldn't accept it. That woman who had always been weak and dependent on him had secretly contacted a force he couldn't control at all. When did she start planning this? When he froze her bank cards to force her? Or when he made all hospitals refuse Leo? No, perhaps even earlier. From the moment they divorced, she had been preparing to completely escape him. This realization sent a bone-chilling cold through Adrian, surpassing even the current storm. He had always thought Evelyn was his caged bird. As long as he loosened his fingers, she would obediently fly back. He never expected she had long created a sky no one could touch. Adrian, are you still on the rooftop? The rain is so heavy, come down quickly, don't catch a cold. Vivian called again, her tone full of concern. The gentleness that once pleased him immensely now only felt unbearably noisy. Why are you calling me? I saw you hadn't come down yet, I'm worried about you. Vivian said aggrievedly, that woman is really something, running away herself is one thing, but making you worry like this, she's deliberately tormenting you. Shut up. Adrian finally exploded. If it weren't for you fanning the flames beside me, would I have made her kneel? Would I have pushed things to this point? Adrian, wasn't I just venting for you? Who made her treat me like that before? Vivian's voice carried a sob. Venting for me? Adrian sneered. Are you venting for me, or showing off your current position? Vivian, don't forget, the position of madam. I haven't nodded yet, so you can't sit in it for a day. With that, he slammed the phone down. He paced irritably on the rooftop, completely soaked, looking like a madman. He couldn't figure out how things had developed this way. He just wanted her to submit, to know what leaving him entailed. He just wanted her back to the Evelyn who depended on and admired him. He took out his phone and opened the photo album. Inside was a photo he had secretly taken. It was before the divorce, Evelyn watering flowers on the balcony, sunlight sprinkling on her, a picture of peaceful times. At that time, he felt everything was under his control. But now, this photo seemed like a huge irony. At that moment, his phone vibrated. It was a new email. The sender was an unfamiliar domain with an extremely complex suffix. He opened it as if compelled. The email was short, just one line in English. Adrian's English was good, he understood it at a glance. Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for providing volunteer donor, Evelyn, and experimental subject, Leo, for our Ares project. Their data will make an outstanding contribution to human medicine. Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for providing the Ares project with volunteer donor, Evelyn, and experimental subject, Leo. Their data will make an outstanding contribution to human medicine. Volunteer donor. Evelyn? Experimental subject. Leo? Adrian's mind went blank, the phone slipped from his trembling hand, falling onto the waterlogged ground, the screen shattering instantly. Donor. Experimental subject. These two words echoed repeatedly in Adrian's mind, like two dull knives cutting at his sanity. He staggered back a few steps, colliding with the rooftop railing, the cold metal jabbing painfully into his spine. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. How could Evelyn be a donor? Donate what? Leo is his son, how could he be an experimental subject? This must be fake, it's Evelyn deliberately having someone send this email to retaliate against him. Yes, it must be. He bent down to pick up the shattered phone, the screen was already dark. He rushed back to the elevator, madly pressing the button for the first floor. He had to go back, he had to use all his power to trace the source of this email thoroughly. He had to find Evelyn, he had to ask her face to face what the hell she was up to. The elevator doors opened, Jason and several bodyguards were anxiously waiting outside. Adrian, are you okay? Adrian pushed him aside and strode out. Prepare the car. Back to the company. Call back everyone from the tech department. Now. His voice was hoarse, carrying a sharp edge on the verge of collapse. The car sped through the rainy night. Adrian sat in the back seat, completely soaked, water droplets falling from his disheveled hair, staining a small dark patch on his expensive trousers. His mind was a tangled mess. The content of that email, the unfamiliar sender, and the mysterious name Ares Project. He suddenly remembered something. Once, he accidentally saw Evelyn reading a German document. He casually asked what it was. Evelyn just said it was cutting-edge medical information sent by a friend who is a doctor in Germany. He hadn't paid attention at the time. Now thinking back, could that so-called doctor friend be part of this Ares project? So, she had started preparing long ago? This thought suddenly constricted Adrian's heart. He couldn't imagine that the woman who was always gentle and quiet in front of him was secretly planning such a earth-shattering escape. Back at the company, the tech department was brightly lit. Adrian. The tech director came up. Investigate. Check this email address for me. Adrian recited the complex domain. The tech director immediately led the team to start operations. Time passed second by second. Adrian stood in front of the huge screen, silent. His silence oppressed the office atmosphere to the extreme. Vivian called again. Adrian glanced at it and directly hung up. He had no mood now to deal with anyone's affectations. Adrian, we found it. The tech director suddenly shouted. Adrian turned sharply. This email, its server address is, in Switzerland, and it's the highest level of encryption. We can't get in at all. The tech director wiped the sweat from his forehead. However, through reverse tracing, we found the registration information for this domain. He projected the found information onto the big screen. The institution's name was long, a string of German, with small English translation below, Ares Global Medical Research Institute. Ares Global Medical Research Institute. Below was a line of small text introduction, dedicated to cutting-edge scientific research on human life extension, protected by multiple sovereign states jointly. Adrian stared fixedly at that line. At that moment, a technician softly exclaimed, "Wait. I've seen this name in the dark web database." He quickly typed on the keyboard, pulling up an encrypted file. Found it. Here. The screen displayed a report on the Ares project, old news from a few years ago, dug up by some hacker. The report mentioned the brutality of this project. To conquer certain medical challenges, they would seek the most suitable experimental subjects and donors. And the so-called donors often meant the end of life. At the end of the report was a blurry photo. In the photo, a woman lay on a hospital bed, tubes inserted all over her body, with several doctors in white coats standing beside. The photo's caption, Ares Project Volunteer Number 7, declared brain dead after successful heart donation. Adrian's breathing completely stopped at that moment. Declared, brain dead. These words hammered heavily on Adrian's heart. His vision blackened, his body swayed, and he barely held on to the nearby table to avoid falling. Evelyn. In that email, it clearly stated, volunteer donor, Evelyn. He had always thought this was just her way to scare him. But now, the bloody information from the dark web told him that all this might be real. Adrian? Adrian, are you okay? Jason quickly supported him. Adrian shook off his hand, staggering to the screen, staring fixedly at the photo. Although the photo was blurry, he recognized at a glance that the woman on the bed wasn't Evelyn. He breathed a sigh of relief, but his heart remained suspended. Not her didn't mean she wouldn't be the next. Pull up all the information on this project. All of it. He growled lowly. The technicians dared not slack off and immediately began frantically searching various databases. Adrian returned to his office and closed the door. He needed to calm down. He took a pack of cigarettes from the drawer, his hands shaking badly, taking several tries to light one. He took a deep drag, the nicotine flavor brought a sliver of clarity to his chaotic mind. He began to recall everything related to Evelyn. He remembered when they first married, she was like that, quiet, gentle, managing the home impeccably. He thought she would always be like that. When did it start changing? It seemed after Vivian appeared. No, earlier than that. It was after Leo was diagnosed with heart disease. He remembered once, because of an important overseas merger, he didn't go home for a month. When he returned, Evelyn held Leo and calmly said to him, Adrian, have you ever thought about what would happen if you lost us? How did he answer then? He seemed to laugh, pinch her face, and say, silly, how could you leave me? Without me, you couldn't even survive. Now thinking back, how ridiculous that statement was. She wasn't asking him, she was notifying him. She had long thought of leaving. And he, like an arrogant fool, knew nothing. He even used the most vicious words to humiliate her, threatening her with their son's life. Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for providing the volunteer donor. That sentence from the email resurfaced in his mind. So, when he forced her to the brink, she had prepared a great gift for him. She wanted to turn him into an executioner who personally sent his wife and son to the experimental table. Heh, hee hee. Adrian laughed, the laughter growing louder, finally turning into a painful roar. He swept everything off the desk to the ground. The sound of shattering glass was particularly piercing in the empty office. Vivian came in at some point, startled by the mess on the floor. "Adrian, what's wrong with you? Did that woman anger you again?" She stepped forward, wanting to hug him. Adrian turned sharply, his bloodshot eyes staring fixedly at her. "Get out." "Adrian?" "I said get out." He grabbed a crystal ornament from the desk and smashed it hard near Vivian's feet. "Don't let me see you again. Get out of my world." Vivian's face turned pale with fright, and she scrambled out. Finally, only Adrian was left in the office. He slumped on the ground, surrounded by chaos. Like a trapped beast, desperate and powerless. At that moment, his backup phone rang. It was an unfamiliar international number. He numbly answered. "Mr. Adrian?" On the other end was a calm and restrained male voice with an obvious German accent. "I am Klaus." Klaus. Adrian remembered this name. Evelyn had called this name on the phone. Adrian suddenly stood up from the ground, his voice trembling with excitement. "Where's Evelyn? Where's Leo? How are they?" "Mr. Adrian, I'm calling you at Ms. Evelyn's request to explain some situations to you." Klaus's voice was steady without a ripple, as if stating something unrelated to himself. "Ms. Evelyn and Leo's surgeries have both ended." "Ended? How were the results?" "They're both alive, right?" Adrian asked urgently, like a drowning man clutching the last straw. The other end was silent for a few seconds. These seconds felt like a century to Adrian. Little Leo's heart transplant surgery was very successful. He has escaped life-threatening danger and is recovering. Adrian's heart relaxed halfway. What about Evelyn? How is she? The donor isn't her, right? Mr. Adrian, the donor sources for the Ares project are our highest secret. Klaus avoided his question. I can only tell you that before the surgery, Ms. Evelyn signed an irrevocable legal document, voluntarily donating all her organs for medical research. What? Adrian's brain buzzed. Is she crazy? How could you agree to her doing this? This is her own will, we have no right to interfere. Klaus's tone remained calm. In fact, she became our volunteer a year ago. From then on, she was preparing for today. A year ago. That was exactly when he first hit her because of Vivian. So, from that time, she had already completely despaired of him. No, impossible. Adrian muttered to himself, I want to see her. Let me talk to her. I need to hear it myself. Sorry, Mr. Adrian, that's probably not possible. Why not? I'm her husband. I'm Leo's father. I have the right to know the truth. Adrian roared hysterically. Husband? Klaus chuckled lightly, the laugh full of undisguised mockery. Mr. Adrian, when you froze her bank cards and made all hospitals refuse your son, did you fulfill even 1 second of your duty as a husband and father? When you made her kneel and beg you, just to satisfy your pathetic control desire and the vanity of the woman beside you, did you remember they were your wife and child? Each of Klaus's words was like a sharp knife, precisely stabbing into Adrian's most painful spots. Adrian opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. Yes, what right did he have? Mr. Adrian, Ms. Evelyn asked me to tell you. She said she doesn't hate you because you're no longer worth wasting any emotions on. From the moment she stepped onto the helicopter, you and she have no relation anymore. As for Leo, after he recovers, she will tell him that his father chose to abandon him when he needed him most. No, don't. Adrian pleaded, don't be so cruel, please. His proud dignity was crushed to pieces at this moment. Cruel? Klaus countered, compared to what you've done, which do you think is more cruel? All right, Mr. Adrian, I've said what I needed to say. Wait. Adrian shouted urgently, tell me how Evelyn really is. Is she still alive? Please tell me. On the other end, Klaus seemed to sigh. Leo's surgery was successful. As for the donor. Klaus paused deliberately, then the call was abruptly hung up. Beep, beep, beep. The busy tone rang in Adrian's ear like the death knell. Adrian's world collapsed. Like a madman, he mobilized all possible connections, flew to Germany, then to Switzerland, trying to find that mysterious Ares Institute. The power and money he once prided himself on seemed insignificant before these true top forces. What he encountered were always closed doors and polite but impenetrable rejections. Sorry, Mr. Adrian, we don't have the people you're looking for. Sorry, Mr. Adrian, this is private territory, please leave. He threw money, he threatened, he even resorted to some gray area methods. But the results were all in vain. Like a headless fly, he buzzed around the European continent, visibly withering at a rapid pace. The once spirited business emperor became a stubbly, red-eyed vagrant. And he didn't know that in a sanatorium deep in the Swiss snow mountains, Evelyn was leaning by the window, looking at the vast white snow outside. Her face was still somewhat pale, but her complexion had improved a lot. The Ares project was indeed brutal. But it also represented the pinnacle of human medicine. At the last moment, Klaus's team activated an undisclosed bridging technology, using a temporary artificial heart to buy time for Leo to wait for a matching donor. And Evelyn, as the project's first priority donor, also received the most comprehensive body repair treatment. She won the bet. Using her own life as stake, she gambled for her son's vitality and her own rebirth. Mommy, look at the snowman I drew. Leo held up a crayon drawing and ran to her. His little face was rosy, showing no sign of his recent struggle on the line between life and death. It's drawn really well. Evelyn smiled and touched his head. Mommy, when can we go out to build a snowman? When you're a bit better, and Uncle Doctor says it's okay, we'll go. Yay! Leo cheered and ran off to draw again. Evelyn picked up the nearby tablet. It showed news from H City. Shin Group President Adrian missing for over a month, company stock plummets, internal turmoil. Below the news was a photo of Adrian taken at some European airport. In the photo, he looked haggard, his eyes vacant, completely devoid of his former charisma. Evelyn calmly scrolled past that news without any pause. Just as Klaus said, that person was no longer worth wasting any emotions on. Her lawyer called via video. Miss Evelyn, all your and Mr. Adrian's joint assets in the country have been donated to the Children's Heart Disease Foundation as per your request. Additionally, due to the President's long absence and the unilateral termination of several important overseas projects, the Shin Group has fallen into a serious financial crisis. I see. Evelyn nodded. Thank you, Lawyer Grace. You're welcome. Take care of yourself and the child. Hanging up, Evelyn looked out the window. The snow had stopped, the sun was out, golden sunlight sprinkled on the snow, reflecting dazzling light. Everything was developing in a good direction. At that moment, Leo ran over again, holding the tablet in his small hands, pointing at a photo on it. It was Evelyn and Adrian's wedding photo. She had forgotten to delete it. Mommy, Leo looked up, asking in a clear voice, is this Uncle Daddy? Evelyn's heart trembled slightly. Evelyn looked at the man smiling triumphantly in the photo, momentarily unsure how to answer. How could she explain to a 4-year-old that the man in the photo was his father, yet also the one who almost killed him? Seeing she didn't speak, Leo asked again. Will he come to see us? The child's eyes were crystal clear, full of pure curiosity. Evelyn took a deep breath, squatted down to Leo's level. Leo, Daddy, he went to a very far place and can't come back for now. She chose the mildest explanation. Is it a very, very far place? Farther than from here to our old home? Yes, much farther. Will he come back then? Maybe. Evelyn didn't close the door completely. When Leo grows up, maybe you'll see him. She didn't want to plant seeds of hatred in the child's heart. But she would never let Adrian appear in their lives again. Leo nodded as if understanding, soon distracted by a new toy. Evelyn deleted that photo. Everything belonging to Adrian should be completely cleared from her world. Another month passed, and Leo's body fully recovered. Dr. Klaus arranged everything for them. They left Switzerland and went to a warm island country to start a new life. Evelyn used her father's inheritance to open a small flower shop. The days were peaceful and serene. On the other side, Adrian, after exhausting all his energy and money, finally received a message that made him despair. The Ares Project Institute wasn't in Switzerland or Germany at all. It was a mobile maritime base, with uncertain whereabouts, its coordinates unknown to anyone. He had been played. From beginning to end, he was toyed with in the palm of someone's hand. Like a joke, he performed a costly one-man show in Europe. He returned to H-City dejectedly. What awaited him was a company on the brink of bankruptcy and a pile of messes to handle. Vivian had long hooked up with a new sugar daddy and disappeared without a trace. He was betrayed by all, left with nothing. He shut himself in the villa he once shared with Evelyn, keeping company with alcohol all day. One day, he received an anonymous package. Inside was a photo. In the photo, Evelyn wore a white dress, holding Leo, standing at the door of a flower shop blooming with flowers, smiling brightly. In Leo's arms was a kitten. His little face was chubby, healthy, and lively. The photo's background was blue sea and sky, sunny and bright. Adrian looked at the photo, tears falling without warning. He reached out, wanting to touch Evelyn's smiling face in the photo, but dared not. He finally bought their address from a private detective. He booked the fastest flight and flew there. He wanted to find her. He didn't want the company, didn't want money, didn't want anything. He just wanted her and their child. When he stood dust-covered at the flower shop door, seeing Evelyn bowing her head trimming flower branches, sunlight gently sprinkling on her, his heart felt like it was struck hard by something. Step by step, he walked toward her. Hearing footsteps, Evelyn looked up. Seeing Adrian standing before her, she was momentarily dazed but quickly regained her composure. The man before her was no longer the arrogant Adrian. He was emaciated, his hair gray, his eyes full of fatigue and vicissitudes. "Are you okay?" Adrian spoke, his voice extremely dry. Evelyn didn't answer his question, just faintly asked, "How did you find this place?" Adrian was at a loss for words. He couldn't say he bought it. "Anything? Buying flowers?" Evelyn picked up scissors, continuing to trim the rose thorns, her movements calm and unhurried. Her calmness made Adrian feel a wave of panic. He would rather she hit him, curse him, than treat him like a complete stranger now. "Evelyn, I was wrong." He stepped forward, wanting to grab her hand. Evelyn stepped back, avoiding his touch. "Mr. Adrian, please respect yourself." The address Mr. Adrian completely widened the distance between them. "Evelyn, don't treat me like this." Adrian's voice carried pleading. "I know I was a bastard before, I wasn't human. I regret it, I really regret it. I lost the company, I have nothing left, come back with me, let's start over, okay?" Evelyn stopped her actions, looked up, and seriously gazed at him. "Adrian, do you think that now you have nothing, I'll pity you and return to your side?" Adrian was stunned. "You're wrong." Evelyn said, "When you had everything, what I valued wasn't your money. When you have nothing, I won't pity you for that either. Between us, it ended long ago." "No. It hasn't ended." Adrian shook his head excitedly. "We still have Leo. He's our son." "Yes, Leo." Evelyn's tone cooled. "When you used his life to force me to kneel, why didn't you think he was your son?" Adrian's face instantly drained of color. I was out of my mind then. Enough." Evelyn interrupted him. "I don't want to hear this anymore. Leave, and don't disturb our lives again." "Mommy." From the inner room of the flower shop ran a small figure. Leo saw Adrian, curiously stopped, hid behind Evelyn, peeking out half his little head. "Leo." Adrian looked at his son, his eyes reddening instantly. He squatted down, extending his hand to Leo. "Leo, come to Daddy." Leo shrank back in fear. Evelyn protected him behind her and said to Adrian, "He's doing very well now, very happy. I don't want him to know he once had such a cruel father." This sentence became the last straw that broke Adrian. He slumped on the ground, wailing like a child. Evelyn didn't glance at him again. She took Leo's hand, walked into the inner room of the flower shop, and gently closed the door. Outside the door was Adrian's desperate cries. Inside the door was warm sunlight and the fragrance of flowers. Evelyn held Leo, kissed his forehead. "Baby, shall we go see the sea?" "Yes." She led him out through the flower shop's back door. Not far away was a vast, boundless blue sea.